stuck in the mail.
Hey, stuck in the middle, guys and girls and kids and boys and people around the internet universe. Hope you're having a weird day and a weird time. I'm sure it's going to be nothing but that. Uh, Mike and
Casey,
I are going to talk about an awesome pick.
I am having a weird day. I'm so glad you asked.
Yeah, yeah. So this pick, I got to set this up. Got to get the brain working again here. It's nice to focus. This next pick is a female artist who was classically trained in the blues, if you can believe that's possible. A white female artist, nevertheless, and ended up somehow playing with essentially the original grouping of what would be literally Parliament Funkadelic, Invictus Records, and that is Ruth Copeland on Invictus Records. I'm going to show the back first here. I think it does a little more justice. The cover, a little questionable. I don't know what those Motown execs were thinking there. We won't cover that. It's a fantastic album, most importantly. And Ruth Copeland was a singer. She was from the UK and she came over. She apparently was friends with George Clinton, was writing for the first Parliament album. I know some of this might seem difficult to believe. It's all true. And made this album with the legends, the best
It-
of the best of what Parliament Funkadelic was and is.
yeah, it's quite a collaboration. I, of course, had never heard of Ruth Copeland before, and so you are enlightening me now. But yeah, it's pretty wild when you listen to Osmium, the first Parliament album, because lo and behold, she wrote I mean, the sole writer of two of the
Yeah.
most memorable songs on that album, which are the country one, Little Old Country Boy,
Little Country Boy. Mhm.
and the closing track, the crazy wild track, The Silent Boatman.
Yes. Such a good track.
Yeah, it sounds like
Amazing.
something like Richard and Linda Thompson would write.
Yes. Yes. We're this podcast, if you're enjoying this, Mike and I here, we're hitting on some heavies constantly. Like this is the best work we can do with low technology. We're lo-fi dudes here. But man, some of these album picks, you can't find better ones. I've known about Ruth for, I don't know, maybe 5, 10 years, possibly through Osmium. Osmium was an acquisition of mine that I was very much in love with. It was a reissue. I still don't have an original, but I really like, with the exception of like the early Funkadelic stuff, Maggot Brain and self-titled, the Parliament first album is my go-to. And no, it's not a party album. It's not a 70s album. But from a songwriting perspective and from a genre perspective, what they did, with even a little help from this woman here, Ruth Copeland, they made an album that is so dynamic that it's no wonder why they were dropped by Invictus. And it's no wonder why Parliament went away for 4 years. 4 years.
Yeah, it's quite virtuosic. It's like, hey, now we can do a song in this genre. Hey, look at us. Now we're doing this. And I mean, it makes
Yup.
sense. Last week we talked about who says a jazz band can't play funk music and all that. And it's kind of the
Yeah.
same idea is like it's sort of like when you start a band and you're like, hey guys, let's write a country song. Hey, now let's do a gospel
Yeah.
song. And these guys could
Right.
actually
Right.
do it. And they all of them sound amazing.
Yep. I know. It's Osmium for me is it's just off the charts. It's you look at it and it's so fairly unassuming for an early or late 60s or early 70s black full rock album, Like it doesn't look that wild. Each person in it on the cover is like in a different character. There's a guy just standing there and he's in a prison outfit with like a ball and chain, and then there's like a clown, and there's like all these archetypes. And it doesn't look like a Parliament or certainly a Funkadelic album. It doesn't look like this is a party, this is a good time. And I think with a lot of first albums, uh, you know, um, that's the opus. And I think that is for Clinton. I think that's everything Clinton wanted to do. And that's that note. And he did many other notes, but that's that note. And it's perfect.
I like to imagine how this all came together, like with Ruth Copeland, and like you said, she's English. She came over
Yeah.
to pursue her music career, and like I'm like, we're I guess they were on the same label, and they just happened to be in the studio at the same time.
Yes.
And they're like, hey, I got this song.
Yeah. I know. I know. I believe I watched some things on Ruth, but it's been a while. I didn't get quite the studying in on this. I do really want to get to these songs because there's what, six songs on this album. I Am What I Am. She has I believe three albums. I'm not fully up. I learned just the other day that she went under an alias before Ruth Copeland of Kelly Michaels, and I have purchased that 7 inch, and it's not on YouTube, so I will upload that to YouTube. But this album, it's an interesting mix because I think the first side is just an amazing, like if you know Parliament and Funkadelic, you listen to this and you're like, Eddie Hazel's so everywhere
Yeah,
everywhere on that first track, just literally everywhere. And it's such a soulful, amazing track about getting this medal and being in, the service. And then it's like all you have, you just have this piece of metal, and
yeah.
it's such a gut-wrenching war song. Like,
Yeah, it correct me if I'm wrong, but so it's the wife of the husband who has been killed in action and she gets a medal and she's
yeah,
basically saying like
yeah,
this medal is not gonna, embrace me. This medal is not gonna be there with me to live my life. So I'm supposed to feel all this honor and pride for my husband who's given the ultimate sacrifice, but this this medal can't do for me what he who he was. It's
right.
very it's an intense opener.
To say the least. And then Eddie Hazel just rips and shreds all over it. Just like, what? Like,
Yeah,
what?
I think if I picked up this album in a record store at the time, I don't think I would have, based on the cover art, I don't think I would have been expecting this.
I know it is also in the bin with Judy Sill and Jim Sullivan because my picks are getting more and more obscure, but some of these picks are so like I want to talk about these artists.
Yeah.
Um, this is why I've went through so many dusty crates that I have. You can't do this just by typing in words on the internet. I mean,
Well,
unless you get really lucky.
and I know that we try to resist the comparisons, but it is what we do as music people. So I would say this does feel a little bit like the sort of Jefferson Airplane era
Yeah.
of, I don't know, would you call that psychedelic rock?
I mean this album really leads hard into psychedelic rock. Yes. Kind of like more progressive. I mean, it really only sounds like Funkadelic. When you're hearing this, it's like,
Mhm.
wow, I mean, they're about to
And
make Funkadelic, you know?
And I mean, the next couple of songs are a little bit more soulful. They're a little bit more like Janis Joplin kind of sounding. There's the Hari
Heavy
Krishna one.
gospel. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and so like I feel like she is I'm not trying to say that she's trying to sound like Grace Slick, but it's just sort of the genre that at the time, which it's interesting because I actually really, I don't know about you, but I really like this genre. Um, Jefferson Airplane was one of the groups that really stood out to me when I did my whole album project. And I was like going through all these old albums and I was like, oh, I really like this. But it doesn't like the only songs by Jefferson Airplane that you will ever hear on the radio are White Rabbit and I guess just White Rabbit.
Someone to love.
Yeah,
Someone to
right,
love.
right. But like an album like Volunteers is so good. It's got this oh man, I'm gonna come back to it and remember the name of this track, but it's got Jorma, on guitar, and it's just some wild guitar like freakouts going on. And anyway, I just
Sadly,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, sadly, Airplane is always in the dollar bins, which is truly sad.
Oh, really? That's crazy.
Sadly. You can go get their whole catalog today, man. And I recommend you do. I find them all the time, and I'm not a huge fan, but I'm going to take a second listen thanks to your remarks.
Well, oh, I found the song. It's called Hey Frederick, and it's amazing.
Okay.
That
I
album
believe it.
also has wooden ships on it, and
Okay.
We Can Be Together, which has a very sneaky mother effer snuck into a very popular recording.
Gotcha. That's always fun. 70s has a lot of that. Do you know there's
Um,
still people that don't know? And I only learned this recently, so I'm an idiot. But The Mothers is actually a short.
oh, cool. Now you
Zappa's band is not The Mothers. They literally said that, and then Verve was like, no.
so then they decided to become the mothers of invention.
Well, like, look at those mothers over there. That's short for something. They're
I know,
not
but
just the mother.
did they become the mothers of invention after that?
Yeah, but then of course, what happens with that is you drop the invention. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's a
Okay.
long story, but it is true.
Interesting. Well, the only
Yeah.
reason I'm going off on Jefferson Airplane is I feel like this genre, like as I'm listening to Ruth Copeland, I'm like, I really like this. I feel like this genre has like been lost to time. Like no one's making music like this after
Yeah.
1972, you know?
Are we are we talking about like heavy, like really emotional female fronted rock bands? Is that what we're talking about? Because there was a
Yeah,
lot. You're right. A lot.
it's that heavy, it's the wailing. Like wailing,
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
female wailing is like a
Yeah.
first of all, it's really hard to do. I say that like I know, but
Yeah.
a female voice is not like a male voice. Like if to have the kind of power that Ruth has on this album at that high register, people just stopped singing in that high register as music,
Yeah.
continued. And so I just feel like there's this period of time, like late 60s, early 70s, where you got Led Zeppelin, but you've also got women doing that kind of singing.
Right, right. And the thing is, and then you got Robert Plant, and he's trying to do the woman part, I mean, there's many sing well, for sure, for sure. He's in that high range, and many rock singers try to do that. And the harder the music gets, unless it's like the jud 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 jud, the harder the music gets, heavy metal wise, the male singer usually gets higher to the point where he's so high, you know there's a lot of bands where it's like, wow, like I mean, that's singing. You have to have someone in front of the music, right? So, I'm sure when George Clinton, to try to imagine this meeting of George Clinton and Ruth Copeland, I'm sure once he heard her sing, he said, "Yeah, right for me. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I'll put my best on your album,
Hmm.
because he was in that clique too. It was Holland and Dozier and Holland from Motown. It was George Clinton. He was in now, and then of course immediately gets in trouble. Immediately pretty much off the label immediately. But like Ruth too must have been in that room, and it was about talent,
Yeah.
and they recognized that, Now, early in the 70s, a white girl wandered in to Detroit and wandered in and comfortable with that. It would have to have been someone like Ruth because she was comfortable with that. She was classically trained by a black musician, a blues musician,
Hmm.
And so she was comfortable with that attitude and jive and talk. And she just was like, oh, you want to hear me sing? Let's do this. That's my recreation. And I hope that it's accurate,
Well,
you
and
know?
I was reading a little bit about it too. Like when she was in England, she played with like a neighbor of hers who was this sort of
Yeah.
country guy, Fingers or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I looked up a video of him, and it's very sort of slapstick. Like now I'm playing this with my feet, and now I'm going to go over here and play a
Wow.
guitar. Like,
Wow.
it makes sense to
Wow.
me that she ended up writing Little Old Country Boy because it's kind of right out of that playbook.
Yeah, exactly. That was just she's just covering. We gotta turn this record over. I mean, I'm not crazy about Hare Krishna. It's a decent tune. It's got some great gospel stuff. Bernie really shines in this album when it's gospel stuff, and his
Oh,
keys shine. Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. But yeah, the
well,
second side,
hold
two
on.
stones covered.
Yeah, hold on. Before we flip it,
Next week.
I'm glad you mentioned Bernie because I think my favorite moment of
Yes.
the whole record is in Hare Krishna, which it's fine. It's not like my favorite, but
Yeah.
it's when the key changes and you hear that crazy organ thing where he's like, "Ugh." I mean,
Yep.
it's probably like a 5 second lead up, and it is just completely wild.
Yeah, it's probably some kind of arc. So arcs were what Brian Eno played, where you're like patching in the phone cords and you're like, okay, here we go, lift off, I'm sorry, ARP, I think. ARP,
All right.
or it's obviously, I'm going to say Moog. Lots of people these days say Moog. I like saying Moog. So Moog could be a Moog synthesizer. There's a whole gamut. But that guy, on this album, it says electric piano because the keyboard's not in vogue enough yet. People don't know what a keyboard is. So Bernie here is an electric piano player, and I would argue one of the best.
Yeah, and there are just these moments of like, there are just these moments of Parliament virtuosity where like you're like, oh yeah, that's Eddie Hazel, oh yeah, that's Bernie.
Yeah, you see this real like if Invictus had ever become anything, which they really hadn't. They had chairman of the board, Frida Payne, Band of Gold, but they never really became anything. And if they'd have used the Parliament musicians as the session musicians they were, they could have just cranked out the hits.
Hmm.
I don't know if that's what George Clinton wanted to do. He's like, where does that plan involve me getting a guy in an adult baby suit and a rattle? And they bounced.
Uh,
I
so,
love that reference.
so flipping it over, two Stones covers. What's up?
Yes. I think one of my wailing songs so far, post-election results songs, the Stones Play with Fire, which is one. I'm not a Stones guy, but I love Play with Fire. It's of that early, but not early Stones. It's the early songwriting phase where Jagger and Richards are writing the songs. They're not covering Muddy Waters anymore.
Yeah.
And now Jagger comes out with Play with Fire. And so I love this song from a Portland band that I loved called Dead Moon, who would cover it. And that's another episode one day. Amazing band. Some of you hopefully know of them, but they were like my hometown band. But oh no, the brain's going. Where was I?
You're talking about Play with Fire.
Ah, I mean, what a song. What
What
an
a song.
anthem. And what like it'll hype you up. If you're feeling down, if you're feeling like you can't fight today, like, wow, that song. It's so
Well,
much better than the Stone. I'm sorry.
yeah, so I went back and listened to the Stones version and I'm like, oh, it's like way faster and way more lightweight. And I'm like,
Yeah.
it needs to be this epic scope, which is what Ruth did with it. And I'm sure other people have covered it in a similar
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. 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 Oh, a lot.
But yeah, that this was the moment listening to this album where I'm like, it is just a travesty, in my opinion, of what commercial radio, soulless radio has done. Not that people even listen to the radio anymore the way they used to, but like when you listen to classic rock, you're going to hear White Rabbit if you're lucky. You will never
Mhm.
hear Play with Fire. And I'm sitting here listening to this song going, this is incredible. And if you played this for anyone who loves classic rock, they would be like, yes, turn it up. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
so why is this great music being lost in these obscure records that no one's heard of? This was the moment
Almost got it, man.
that
I
that
got moved.
because like I mean, part of me is like, why is she covering songs when she herself is such a great songwriter? But then you hear Play with
See?
Fire, and I'm like, that's why, because it's so good.
Yeah. Because she feels it. It's that I'm going to go back to you can't be a true singer unless you're a songwriter. And I think this pertains even more to the female voice.
Mm,
And she's feeling the song, Mike. She's really feeling the song.
definitely.
And that's the thing. I mean, that's this album like and then let's see. I can't remember the fifth song, but then goes back into Gimme Shelter. Not my favorite of the two.
Yeah.
And like, whoa, how recent is this to Altamont? I mean, like, what is going on here? Like a year?
Hmm.
She's like, I mean, I'm sure everyone was covering it then, but oh, the other one, fifth track is Don't You Wish You Had, and I didn't type the whole song title, but I just put very funkadelic guitar, which is so
Yeah.
relevant. I mean, very, very funkadelic electric piano.
Uh-huh.
Very very funkadelic guitar, as in Eddie Hazel, just ripping it up, like warming up for Maggot Brain, I guess.
Yep. Yeah.
Ruth
The other
Copeland, I am what I am.
what we didn't talk about Suburban Family Lament.
What do I have for that? Is that the opener?
No,
Or
that's the end of side one. Man, that's a weird little song.
do you want to know what I wrote? I wrote funky Chili
Yeah,
Peppers vibe,
a little
which is
bit.
kind of a cop,
It's got
kind of a
some
cop out.
it's got some interesting lyrics where she's
Yeah.
like,
And
take one of my kids, take two of them. No, take three. I'm like, what is happening right now?
oh yeah, it's satirical. So it's about like suburban,
Yeah,
I
suburban
don't know.
angst and conflict. And anyway,
Yeah, it's a little bit of a throwaway, but so the other thing is, and I don't know this well, but Ruth does have another album that came out before this. Uh and like I said, I might, well, I'm not might, but I'm getting a rare 45 and Mike and I might have our first 45 pick from me. Like couple of years from now, I'll be being like, "Oh, you can pick up this cylinder. It's 1907." Or this 78 is a hot one. We got, such and such orchestra. Probably the way this is going. But yeah,
was that
she has,
self-titled?
yeah, a self-portrait, and
Oh,
that's
of
1970. This, since we never said, is 1971. I
course not.
am what I am. And then 76, Take Me to Baltimore, a return album. Like I said, I thought there was three. I really need to find them. You don't see them. This is not Jim Sullivan, Judy Silrare, but you would see maybe three or four of these before you even like graze the Judy Sill.
Hmm.
You know, this is rare, but it's
Yeah.
not rare. Rare, 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 rare. So,
Well, it's
but
quite,
oh,
quite a quite a trifecta you've put up here lately, Casey.
I'm
Judy, Jen,
doing my best work.
and now Ruth.
And I have a very interesting next pick, but we'll get to that after we get to your pick, which I believe we're segueing to, I believe.
Yeah, let's segue. I enjoyed this album. Thank you for introducing me. I'm gonna reach behind me to get this one.
Aha.
I don't have
I
to go
knew it.
far. Okay,
I
so
knew it.
you know how much I love this album. I
Yeah.
just been waiting to do it because I was waiting for the right time. I don't know if it's the right time, but this is coming up next.
I like it.
Is Peter Gabriel, his fourth self-titled album, I believe, but it is known as Security. I'm not really sure
Okay.
why it's known as Security, to be honest. It does not appear to be on.
Does it say it on the label?
I'll have to do a little research on that. But this was from '82, so it is just before his
Uh,
big breakthrough with So, which everybody knows. But this
okay.
one was right before. It was still when Peter was a little edgy, a little weird. And don't get me wrong, I love So. I'll explain next time my journey with
Yeah,
Peter
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Gabriel.
No, no, no.
A lot of people
So
like. Go ahead.
this is the last of his solo career.
Uh,
To popularize,
until he
this
blew up.
post gen. Yeah,
This is
exactly. Okay,
this is
cool.
just before Sledgehammer, so it's kind of still in his art rock phase, I guess. Although I would say he continued. I think my opinion is that So uh, it happened to blow up, but it actually is very much in keeping with his others. But that's a whole other topic as well. But
Okay, so what is the hit on this one? Clue me in here. I know it. Is it Games Without Frontiers or something? Help me out.
this one, I don't know that it has a hit. It's just kind of
Oh,
it's a real weird, real strange. You've never heard anything like it.
huh.
I guess Shock the Monkey is the hit.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Shock the Monkey. I remember that song well from like being in the 80s.
Yeah. So this is like right right before the breakthrough, which I find fascinating, and it's got some
Okay.
super interesting musical textures on it. That's why I love it. I love the textures. It was right as
Yeah.
we were transitioning into the digital world, but yet still very much analog.
And look at us now. I wanted to start this episode out with like, greetings from the simulation. Have we begun?
Oh, yeah. I think that began in February of 2020.
I think so too. I really do. I think we all know it too, but this has been really great for my brain because my brain needs focus. I've been pretty scattered, but I love your pick. I'm not an I have that album somewhere. Now I have to find it in my own record. So it's like a mini dig. It's like, wow, everything's free because I own it. So
I came close to picking this up because I found the Dutch, the German version. There's literally a German version.
oh yeah.
Like he
Yeah.
sings German, and
Right. No.
which is harder than you might think. He literally has
Oh
to
yeah.
change the melody in some places, and in some places it actually works better. So it's pretty fascinating. But I'm an idiot,
Yeah,
and
that's yeah, I might have to try to track that down. I don't know if that's going to happen, but the other famous one is I believe David Bowie Heroes is
mm,
in, I
yeah,
believe. Where he's singing in German. So he's also living in Germany. So hopefully he's picked up at least the like the vocal inflections, which I'm sure he has, I when I was in Japan, like couldn't speak much of it, but what I could speak just kept getting more and more like what's called old man samurai voice, like you know,
yeah,
oh boy, just cancel myself there. Anywho, it just seemed natural that that was my voice. I just don't look like an old Japanese businessman.
right,
I'm the dude.
yeah. Well,
I'm
apparently
the
Germans
dude.
really
That's
love Peter Gabriel, and they always have. So, for what it's worth,
yeah. It's it's a great pick, and I genuinely am looking forward to it. As soon as I find it, I'm going to play it. And if I find it, and maybe if I don't, I'll buy the German one just out of interest.
yeah. My
And
one clue on this one is you got to play it loudly because it is
yeah.
known as one of those audiophile records. It's known as one of those
Ah,
that you use to test speakers with, that sort of thing.
so you're challenging me to spend a ton of money on a MoFi, huh? Mobile fidelity on like a copy that's four times the cost?
I would say just make sure that you can put it at proper volume to appreciate it.
Okay. Okay. Well, the longest outro ever. Shout out to James at Rain Dogs in Petaluma if you're watching. I know you love Peter Gabriel, so if you have that MoFi, let me know.
Well, everyone, keep your head up, as
Yeah.
we'll try to do as well.
Fight,
And
fight, fight.
happy listening.
Six, 60 days. A lot can happen. A lot can happen. And also, it's just gonna get weirder, so just roll with it. So if you're not rolling with it, I don't know, you're beating yourself up psychologically over something that hasn't happened yet.
Hmm.
Yep. That's all I can do. All right, Mike. Thanks,
All right.
buddy.